Good evening. We've gathered here tonight to have a special workshop, mostly surrounding our budgeting for the next school year. I'd like to open the meeting by reading a letter that we received from Shane Price, the Lindenville Teacher Association President, and Chris Vaughn, his Vice President. The LTA would like to thank the Board of Education for the kind words expressed at the last meeting regarding the commitment of our staff as shown during the pandemic. These times have been tough and have thrown a lot at us all. And through it all, everyone at LCS has remained committed. We appreciate the willingness of all board members to review the budget and search for ways to prevent reductions and ensuring that students have the electives they need and receive the mental health and academic supports needed during these difficult times. We also appreciate the work Mr. Smith and Mr. DePasio have done in the last few weeks, going back through the budget multiple times and continuing to be open to our feedback. As the board moves forward tonight and hopefully adopts a budget with no reductions, there is still cause for concern amongst the members. We need to learn from our past, for example, 2005, 2010, in order to ensure and mitigate the chance of this happening again. Jobs may be saved tonight, but for how long? Teachers have seen that when the times are tough, we are the first to feel it, and our jobs are the first ones on the chopping block. That is why we surveyed our membership, asking for our members for ways they thought the district could save and improve. The results that were emailed to you last week highlight the areas we believe the district can save, how we can increase achievement, and preserve LCS for many years to come. We encourage the board to take the results of the survey and ask the hard questions. In a few years, the federal money will run out, state aid may be frozen again, and we'll be right back here having the same conversations. There has to be a long-term plan. The LTA and its members are willing to help and thank the board for the dedication and commitment. And that's signed Shane Price and Chris Vaughn, President and Vice President of the Lindenville Teachers Association, respectively. So I thank them for their comments. Now we'll go to an updated budget presentation led by Mr. Smith.
Thank you. So we have one small quick item to handle before we get into the school budget. We do have a standing process for our educator and staff member of the year. The process calls for one board member to serve. This would be year 5 of this system, and years 1 and 2, Russ Martino served, and then years 3 and 4, Steve Van served. Steve and I talked, he's willing to serve again, but we'd like to open it up if anybody else is interested to serve. It's a series of probably 2 or 3 meetings, and there's some work that's done in between meetings, mostly reading applications. And the first meeting would be after the upcoming recess, and we would announce the recipients at the June board meeting. So it's about 2 or 3 meetings, no more than 3. And this year we do have several nominees, so it will be a lengthier process. So if anybody's interested, I know Steve and I talked Friday afternoon, but I'd like to see what the rest of you think.
I would like to nominate Steve Van if he's willing to do it, and if we require a nomination. If not, negate the nomination part.
Second, Steve. Don't really need a vote because this is a meeting, but if that's a consensus of the board, Steve, congratulations for year 3. All right, thank you, Steve. Okay, so on to the main business at hand. We want to go through, Joe and I, since we last met in March 8th, we've gone through and have done some significant work and analysis on the budget. To share with you an update tonight. I'm looking for some feedback and conversation on at least 4 or 5 items. So we want to give you some more background information. We do lots of updates. We have lots of updates for you from the federal government. There has been some changes since March 8th. We want to continue to look at the offered and confirmed reductions. I want to talk about the tax levy again, talk about our reserve usage, And then beyond this, the next steps would be to look at the updated New York State aid run, which should be coming to us on or about April 1st. We want to continue to give you more information between now and April 12th. And then April 12th, this board has to adopt the budget that will be shared to the voters in May. I want to recognize also the comments that Shane and Chris Vaughn made to us. I want to just go through and give some background information on some of the comments we heard last month from this board and from the LTA, all of which Shane and I have talked about. But just a couple of quick comments. Since 2012, we have not eliminated any teachers due to any budget constraints. Since 2012, several part-time teaching positions have since become full-time with the support of this board. Everything from art to music to social studies, health PE, school psychologists, and special ed. We have, since 2012, eliminated 2 clerical positions, all through attrition. We also had transportation and campus consolidation in 2012, and we have eliminated 1 cleaning position with the building being closed across the street. Of course, that has now been restored due to COVID. And last point, there have been no administrative positions approved that have had a direct tie-in or a direct nexus to a teacher layoff. So just a couple quick comments there. It was also asked, how do we get here? And I would argue we're not really here. This is the context. By here, it could imply we're in some sort of debt. We're not. But here's how we got to the point on March 8th. Fact number 1 is we had flat state aid over the last 2 years, including March 8th. We also had the impending threat last spring from New York State of having a 20% cut, which would have been devastating to all districts, including ours. We've had issues with revenue flow, as I mentioned there, with the state aid being flat. We're going to talk about a reduction in the aid for our school building. We had a cutback there. Expenses, of course, have risen. COVID costs, as I mentioned last month, to the tune of about $45,000. That has been a factor as well. Also want to recognize that minimal fund balance and minimal reserve usage are a normal part of every budget cycle. It's nothing new. This district has used, every district does use to some degree, fund balance and reserve usage. The question is, how much do we want to use and what percentage do you want to use? That's what the real question is. It's normal to use some of this to balance the school budget. We have also been constrained by the tax levy limit. This year is 2.81%, and also board preference in terms of what we want the tax levy to be. We can go as high, this year's 2.81. We have talked here about staying at 2. So we recognize you as a board have to make that decision regarding the tax levy limit. The last item that's really out of our control to some degree, actually to the whole degree, is TRS, Teachers Retirement System, ERS, their increases that Joe has talked about last month. I also want to point out that here's our fiscal stress. You saw this slide back in February. Nothing's changed. It was just as an update. Here we are in 2018, 3.3% fiscal stress, 3.3% fiscal stress, 10% fiscal stress. You can see we're not in under fiscal stress. The moderate stress is 45 to 64. Fiscal score 65 or higher is major stress. We're not there. Okay, so I want to recognize that in terms of being in the red, and this is designated by the New York State Comptroller. So those are some more facts as well. I also want to comment quickly on staff development. We do recognize there has been some cutbacks on that this year, partially due to cost, partially due to time constraints. But we have had our technology integrator here 2 days a week. We have had sessions for our teachers on Reading Wonders and Vision Math, Google Suite, and Seesaw. Seesaw is used at the lower grades. It's the equivalent of Google Suite. We have had outside trainers here, and we have on occasion shared materials online. The reason for these constraints, one, is we have a shortened day due to having our students who are on remote learning. We have allocated time for our teachers, as most districts have. Some districts allocate a whole day every Wednesday, so to speak, when no students come in at all, and teachers have the whole day to deal with this. We have 20 minutes a day, every day after school. We have tried to reduce meeting times, and there's also been budget constraints and time management for our staff, trying to balance all those in between monetary constraints, fiscal constraints, time constraints, and of course, handling our students who are on full remote. Also wanted to last comment on this. Our special ed rate is 14.37%. You heard a number last month that was not accurate. That has since been acknowledged by the LTA rep. Those are our special ed numbers, 14.37%. The average is 18%. So we're still below average in our special ed numbers. And this was a conversation that took place between Sharon Smith and the LTA rep, and this has been since fixed. So I want to recognize that as well. Yes?
Does that include all grades or?
All grades. Yeah.
All grades, thank you.
Good question, all grades. Okay, so now for some positive news. What has changed since March 8th? First, the Assembly and Senate of New York State have proposed a one-house budget. There's some positive news in there for us. They are recommending, we're going to get into this more, an increase in state aid. And they're also recommending ways to adjust the federal money that has been, quote unquote, given to us. This is important too. Since we last met on March 8th, the American Rescue Plan has now been passed. This is the amount we are going to receive, just under $1.3 million. This is now confirmed. Whether that's going to be grant money or general fund money, we do not know. But this is the money that we are going to be receiving from the federal government directly to us, not to the state. There are, of course, some guidelines with that. It needs to be spent by the year 2023. 20% of this needs to be addressed for learning loss, which can be any combination of things. It can be literacy instruction, it can be summer school, it can be technology. How that's going to work has not yet been explained to us, but this is the amount that we know we're going to receive. And any additional funding, we can use that to offset any savings or reserve usage. But we do have to allocate this much for sure, if not more, to address learning loss. And again, we're not sure that's grant money or that's going to be general fund money. But this is a new fact that we learned right after the board meeting on March 8th. So this is some positive news. Within our own state, it's what's called a one-house budget proposal. And there's some positive news in here if this passes. Now the state has to adopt the budget on April 1st, by April 1st. Within that one-house budget, two things are important. One, the legislature has recommended a 12% increase to state aid school-wide. That doesn't mean 12% more to us, 12% more across the state. How much more we're going to get, we should know that in the next, what, Joey, week or 10 days? Week or 10, yeah. So if it passes any indication, except last year, we will expect to see an increase in the amount of the state aid. The other piece too, and this is not on your slides, I had just added this. Last fall, or actually no, not this past fall, in the governor's run, he had given us $622,000. It shows here as a positive, as revenue. That money is then taken away, so it's net zero. What the House and the Assembly and Senate have asked for is that money come directly to us. So if they have their way, all this money here, plus that $1.3 million could be coming to us. This is not for sure, but I'm gonna go back. This is for sure. What's not for sure is this. What I can tell you is that the Assembly and Senate are asking for this money be returned to the district. The way it reads now is shown as a net zero to us. So what they give it, they then take it away. Any comments on that, Joe? That explains it, right? Yeah, that explains it. Finally, some of you asked about the state offer retirement incentives. Again, these have not passed. These are subject to the approval. The one, if we're going to look at any of them, the one we will be most interested in is 55-25. 55 years of age, 25 years of service. The other one, this one's more complicated, 50 years of age, 10 years of service. There's all kinds of restrictions with that, that I would not recommend that, we look at on that. What's going to happen is if this is approved, TRS is going to send us information on all of our eligible candidates with costs. I can tell you they did send us a rough chart across the state for all districts, and I can tell you the cost of the districts could be expensive. So they gave us 5 or 6 different examples. I can get you those examples later on this week, but the cost would be significant. I'm not recommending that we adopt this right now if it's even passed. I'm recommending that we take a long, hard look at it and make some decisions that may affect us. I would really recommend we stay away from the 50-10. That has to be, if we're going to expect somebody to leave, it's rather complicated. The 55-25, if we're going to do any of them, that might be the best one. But again, this is all contingent upon the budget being passed and this being in the budget. I'm going to stop right now and see if there are any questions. Ted?
With regard to the retirement incentives, what is the language that is being proposed? Like, what is the state going to do? Just allow the retirements to occur at the discretion of every district, or are they kicking in some of the incentive money? What is their obligation? And
they're not kicking in any of the incentive money. They would waive the penalty that the teachers would normally have, and then that penalty is then imposed on the district. We can either pay the penalty in 1 year, or we can pay it over how many years was it? 5? And one was more expensive than the other. Which one do you?
When you pay it over time, they charge some sort of interest rate or whatever it is, but it's greater than one payment total.
So they would waive the normal. So if you retire now, they would waive those penalties, but it's up to us. And this does not also this will not stop us from offering our own incentive as well. So there's those options as well.
I do have an add on this.
Yeah.
Each district has an opportunity to choose not to accept this or accept this individually. So if they do offer it, and then I did an analysis of the numbers, they're very, very costly. It's almost like, we'll wait till we get the real numbers, but the examples they gave, it's almost like we have the funding deep pockets that TRS has, which we don't.
We would balance that out with the costs, if we had the staff be, not replaced or replaced, there will be some savings there as well. But we don't know who these people are until they give us a list. And even prior to that, it still has to be approved by the state. So the 50-10 one is very, restrictive. But the 55-25, if we're going to look at any of them, it will be that one. Harold?
Is there a minimal number that have to take it, or is it one?
No.
One is enough, right?
One is enough.
Okay.
Any other questions on what I've covered so far? Nothing? I'm going to keep going. Okay.
Jason, quick.
Yeah, Jerry.
Going back a couple pages here. And we've hit this once already. I met with you and Sharon to talk about special education. And because you hit on it today, when it came to our numbers at 14.37%, which is pretty low compared to previous years. I've got all that information here that you guys gave out, but the amounts, the way that, we've been decreasing the amount of special education students, we've been increasing the amount of teachers. And what is the relationship there? Because
yeah, I can speak to that.
We need to speak to that, I think.
Yeah. So the instructional model that Sharon and Alyssa have tried to have and have had is a consultant teacher model. So what Sharon and Alyssa would like to have, and we have this to some large degree, is a consultant teacher at each grade level. So we would push those special education kids into the room with the support of a consultant teacher. So those kids would not necessarily be as much, separated as they are now. We ideally want to see a special education teacher. Sharon would like to have one at every single grade level to accommodate for not pulling those students out. So we have special ed kids at every grade level. But I know in the administrative meetings we've had, that's one of the pieces that Sharon and Alyssa are asking for, to have that one consultant teacher at each grade level, Jared. So,
And yeah, so you answered
Yeah.
that to your liking. But we look at reading specialists a little differently, it seems, pertaining to each grade level and
So
where those numbers are going. So if you're gonna hit on that later, that's fine.
Yes, I'm coming to that one.
Okay.
All right, thank you. I'm gonna move on. If there are any more questions, I'll stop in another few minutes. All right, so this piece, Joe and I want to kind of go through and informally with you confirm some of these recommended reductions that we talked about last month. You'll see on here the savings total is $273,000 in savings. I'm going to go through these line by line. Technology teacher, we have Mr. Gress, who is retiring, and recommending that he not be replaced. Want you to know that Principal Aaron Slack is pushing for this not to happen, and I respect him for doing that. He is concerned that we will lose some electives. However, we do have Mr. Wolford, who is certified technology teacher. If we don't replace Mr. Gress, that's a savings. So I want to go on record and recognize that this is not something that, we can monitor for a year, see how it goes, but we do have the recommendation standing, and want to note the principal is concerned with that.
Something we looked at, if we looked at specialized instructors, possibly to share with another school.
Yes, we could do that, Sue. Thank you. Yeah. BOCES Tech Integrator, we have Dave Milam here. Dave does a great job. We honestly, as a district, have grown leaps and bounds in our technology use and how we use it, myself included. So we'd like to pull back on Dave. We already pay for 8 days anyway as part of another service, so we don't need him here for 54 days or whatever we had before. Recommending that be removed. NISBA, this is strictly a board decision. We talked about this last month, whether or not you want to keep your NISBA membership up. That's about $5,000 or $6,000 a year. Recommending the 2 aides still. Summer cleaner, I recommend a reduction there. 2 of the instructional chairs, recommend a reduction there. We are going to contract Dr. Johnson out to our local BOCES. Same service, same cost, but we'll get some state aid back on that. This is a new service BOCES is offering. We have since jumped on that. The last one we need to have some conversation on. So at the last board meeting, we heard this conversation regarding looking at back office services. You saw that in the teacher survey as well. And since then, Joe and I have been in contact with Erie 2 BOCES down in the southern tier. They offer a, let's see if there's a name for it, Joe.
They call it CBO.
Central Business Office, and they offer a treasury service. Currently, we have Patricia Hartigan, who's doing a fantastic job for us. She comes to us with lots of experience. She's been with us since about February of 2017, 2018?
I think it's 2018.
2018. So we'd like to engage and make a recommendation that we, quote unquote, farm that service out to Erie 2 BOCES. Our neighbors at Barker use it as well. The savings on that is about $14,000 after the BOCES aid. So that's something that we could try out, see how it goes. I would recommend that we keep her on to some degree as a consultant when needed. But we'd like to have the conversation with you on using the treasury service to BOCES and not have our own. But this is something new that we did not talk about last month. So I'd like to take comments on this if there are any.
Why would we need a treasurer to consult?
Audit time. Okay, so we also need to have her here for the transition. There'll probably be a month or so of some transition time. Audit time is hectic around here. I think we would need her for that, but it would be very limited.
Could I jump in on this?
Yeah.
So the conversation we've had with Erie 2 is that we're looking towards a July 1st start. If that ends up being the case, if it's being approved. So therefore, with a July 1 start, the treasurer component, we might need a little bit of consulting for the transition, maybe not. And we might need a little bit when the auditors come. but I'm very versed in this area as well.
Prior
I was
to
a treasurer.
Yeah, okay, prior to Joe's arrival, he was the treasurer at Kendall. So he does have that
And
experience.
Greece.
And also Greece. So we feel as though, with your support, we could start to make this shift into back office sharing. I know years ago, Sue and Ted were on the board. They had talked about this then. It never quite took off. Joe and I both feel confident we can move ahead in this direction, see where it goes down the road. This is a cut that would not affect students. It would not be seen. It would not be as visible. It certainly would be felt in terms of the workload in the back office. But we'd like to give this a shot. It also reflects some of your comments that some of you made last time. It also reflects some of the comments you saw in the survey from teachers. Comments, questions on this? I see heads nodding, which is good. Vern?
I have one other question. If we're just taking questions about above, what were the aides? What grade levels were they with?
They weren't really grade levels. One was one was a health aide that post-COVID we were not needing anymore. So it's not really a grade level. They're across the street. So it's grade pre-K, grades 5 and 6, but but it's a health aide. The other one, this other aide would actually move to a new assignment in the cafeteria, which was her old assignment. But they're both across the street and they're both in the pre-K realm.
Okay.
I can get you more specifics on that, but that's what we had talked about last month. And the 1A would not really be laid off. She just would be reassigned to the role of cafeteria monitor, which we had not filled.
Okay.
So we still have that vacant. I got that right, Joe? Other questions, Jared?
So you're taking an aide out of the classroom to put that aide in the cafeteria?
No.
Is that what you're saying?
No, the home health care aide is not really in
Okay.
the home health is not really in a classroom. She is, but her main assignment is to act as the liaison between the nurse and across the street. So that's one. The other one is a pre-K assignment that is based on population of students. So no, but we also have the vacancy across the street.
The pre-K is not covered by the grant, the one that was a pre-K based on the population?
Pre-K is covered by the grant, but then we have to shift some of the grant money around.
Okay, then the other question I have is on the cleaners.
Yeah.
Are we hiring someone
No.
to clean in the summers?
What I'm recommending is we added a 7th cleaner this past fall with the understanding that we're going to be in school 5 days a week, 7 hours a day. Obviously, in the summertime, we have a lot less traffic here. So Joe and I and Kevin feel as though we can support that for at least 2 months. We do have we do have that item still in the budget for the fall if COVID is still an issue for us. But this cleaner has been put on notice that she may not be back at least for the summertime. And then whenever COVID is done, we feel as though we can bring the rest of the students back. So given that we only had we only had 6 workers last year, and we added the 7th because of the population constraint and the health constraints. We could get by comfortably with 6 as we have in the past. So.
Use student for summer students for cleaning in summer?
We have, yep, and we would want to watch it this summer. We've already had a couple of students express interest, but we have had that in the past. Again, that would be a cost item though too.
Quick question on that also. Are we going to be having summer school?
To be determined at the high school level. If we have it at the high school level, it would be through BOCES. And Alyssa and Sharon are talking about that as we speak. A lot of that's going to depend on the shape of our overall budget.
Okay.
But high school will be run, BOCES runs a program at Medina. We've used it in the past. We've done it in-house. They're desperate for summer school teachers. So if our teachers want the work, they can have it at BOCES.
There was also the time when we had the summer school across the street.
Yep.
Is that something that can no longer be back? Could that be a source of income as well?
Oh, you mean the migrant program?
The migrant program.
Oh, good question.
If there's money there that could help with the education program, we might be able to keep the cleaner on top of maybe get some revenue.
I will pursue that. I don't know. They were not with us last year, but I will pursue that again.
I don't think anybody had summer school last year.
No, they did have I hadn't thought about that. So I will pursue that. The other pieces as far as summer school goes, some of that learning loss money that we talked about before, that 273 whatever it is, some of that could also be used to fund summer school if you want to go in that direction as well. so the learning loss, some of it, obviously that would be learning loss.
We just might have some kids that could
I agree.
benefit from some summer classes.
Agree, yeah.
And if we could also bring people in to do it here as well, and maybe with a cost with it, it could be a way to help bring revenue in.
We will reach out to our contact at the Migrant Pro. I had forgotten about that, so thank you.
Wonderful.
Jason,
Jared.
sorry, go ahead and take a drink.
Go ahead, no, go ahead.
So your plan is to bring everybody back over here at the end of this school year?
No, my plan is to bring everybody back over here when it's safe, when the restrictions are loosened up. That's not, I mean, that could happen, Jared, but that's not my plan right now.
Is there potential for that with the, fifth and sixth graders and pre-K to come back over here?
Pre-K would stay over there. I would only bring back grades 5 and 6.
Right, so we need somebody to clean over there, regardless of whether COVID's a thing or not.
Right, and you're right. And we had pre-K last year across the street for a month or so. And we had reassigned cleaners that we had on staff. So we added the 7th cleaner when we brought more students over there. The pre-K program started in February, and we did not add a cleaner at that time. All right, good questions. Anything else on this slide? So I'm looking for some direction on the treasurer. I saw a few heads nodding. Is that something I see Steve nodding? Yes. Definitely. Okay, and see more heads nodding. Okay, so Joe, we will pursue that.
Was there any other positions that you looked into sharing?
There are more down the
Administrative
road.
positions?
Yeah, so yes. Back office positions, they do offer more through BOCES. I've had conversations with them as well as some of my colleagues. What the recommendation is for us to look at that time. I'll kind of like dip my toe in the water with this first, see how it goes, because it could backfire on us. I don't want to certainly lose money on the deal in terms of mistakes being made, but yes, they do offer, Erie One offers a whole gamut of service as well. I would recommend we try this and see how it goes and then keep building up from there.
Could I throw,
To find those shared services
I'm sorry,
that we could potentially take part in?
I missed the beginning portion.
Where could we see that list of services
I can tell you what they
with the
have.
potential of sharing?
Okay, yes, I can tell you right now what they have. They have payroll, they have accounts payable, they have and treasury. That's a list. And those are the offices that we don't. Now, I also want to say that our back office also runs benefits as well. So our payroll clerk also, she does payroll and she oversees the health insurance as well. So we would have to make some adjustments there. But the list, Jared, is just what I said. Treasury, accounts payable, and payroll. And our neighbors to the east or to the west, Barker, they have this. He and I are going to meet next week to talk about how that actually has operated. So, and he did it through attrition, by the way, too. He had people leave and retire, and that's how they went about it there.
could
Go, Joe.
throw in? So as I was doing the research with Jason, what was brought to my attention, it works much, much better when it's attrition. So, for example, accounts payable and payroll are functions that are here, right? Barker had attrition. The 2 people retired, and it made Barker in a situation where they went to this CBO. In addition, so that came directly from the person that runs the CBO. She mentioned how it works much, much better with attrition. The second thing is that looking at the CBO, HR is not one of them. So the benefits is underneath and working with our payroll. So that would end up getting split out, and then we would have to find a place for the
It
benefits.
will be a matter to some degree of reshuffling the deck. We have to deal with seniority contracts, all that could happen. But I would recommend we start with this. I see heads nodding. At least we'll start with this. It'll save us 14 grand, and it'll get us our toe in the water in terms of these backroom services. So,
I have a question for Joe. Payroll, et cetera, those are specific tasks that people do as a function, and those tasks can be moved. But those people are still here full time. How much do you rely on other people in the business staff to help you do your job?
All of them, if that's your question. I mean, the current people back here,
Mm-hmm.
oh, I rely heavily on each of them. Yes.
So if they're if we outsource them and they're no longer here, what burden does that leave you with for you to do your job?
A couple of things. The first is that they do not step on this property at all. So, for example, Erie 2 is a pretty good drive away. So what would happen is that we would have to do everything electronically. We would scan, send over, communicate long distance, all those things.
If I may interrupt, that wasn't my question. Not how the tasks are being.
Okay.
With how do you need those people for you to do your job?
For me to do my job, somebody's going to have to do that communication. And if we clear out this back end, there'll be nobody here to send that communication. Second is that I rely heavily on these people, and I do monitor, but I've mentored as well. So they know their jobs, they know them well. I'm got to trust the people in the new area, which means I'm going to have to continually review what they're doing. So for me personally, it's going to put a great deal more burden on me, if that's your question.
Not exactly. Just let me rephrase to try to make it a little clearer. So let's say, for example, we scramble the budget on you again, and you need to rerun numbers. Do you rely on your staff in the back end to help you come up with those figures? And what happened? They will no longer be there. Are you calling? I don't believe you can pick up the phone and call Erie 2 BOCES and ask for a rerun of number. How is it going to affect the nuts and bolts of your job and how effective you can be? In other words, are we going to attrition out some people or get rid of some people only to realize in a little while that we need some people back to assist you in the nuts and bolts of your job is what ultimately what I'm asking.
That's kind of what I was getting to at all this extra change of duties. We would need at least one person back there with me if we decided to do all of this to CBO, which I would not recommend right now. I would strongly recommend starting with just the treasurer. Do I rely on the treasurer? Absolutely. Will it fall on me and these budget numbers and everything? Well, budget isn't 12 months a year. There's a number of factors that fall with me, as you know, from the July 1 meeting. I think I have 19 different hats, but yeah, it would put more stress on me. I can't define it until I see it, but absolutely, that's going to put a great deal more pressure on me. Will I be able to succeed? I think the answer still would be probably yes, but it's going to be a lot more pressure on me. Yes.
So that's why, those are good questions, Ted, and that's the reason for my recommendation to start with this to see how it goes. I don't want to take 2 steps forward, 1 step back in this process.
This seems relatively easy because
it's a start.
Because we have a part-time contractual agreement with an individual. It's not a full-time employee.
Right.
So it's just a shift of duties, basically, or a shift of destination of duties.
Yes.
So, but I guess I'm more looking at the 360-degree picture of what the long-term planning of outsourcing departments are, or the potential of that.
I'm going to move on to, so these are the confirmed. So we are going to then go ahead and pursue, they asked for an answer for us by the April board meeting, Erie 2, so we're going to go ahead and pursue that. I did talk to our treasurer this morning. We had a very good conversation. She understands. For the record, we're very happy with the work Patricia has done for us over the last 3 years or so. All right, so these are the items, the teaching positions that I want to talk about. Later on, you'll see a recommendation that we quote unquote, restore these back. I want to kind of go through these with you line by line. I'm going to do the same thing with the staff more generally on Wednesday afternoon at a staff meeting. If you add all these up, and I'm going to speak to Jared's question also on the literacy piece as well. If you add all these up, it's $256,000 that will be added to the budget. That's added to the budget you're going to see here tonight. The savings back on March 8th was this amount, 182. So I want to jump right down here to literacy. Oops. And the recommendation initially was to cut literacy and have that literacy instructor.
These positions, the 256,000, they're currently in the numbers in the budget.
Right, that's right.
So I'm sorry, I was trying to understand.
Yeah.
So the 3.1% increase year over year includes this $256,000.
And we're going to talk about why I'm comfortable making those recommendations in just a bit. But I want to jump right to Jared's question here on literacy. So the recommendation initially was to reduce literacy. We're going to pull that back. I'd like to pull that back. And the literacy teacher was going to be offered an assignment to teach, let's say, third or fourth grade. We'd like to keep the literacy position whole as it is now. And then as the class size warrants it, hire a teacher to then teach third grade, fourth grade, whatever it is. Some of this is going to be dictated based on the 6-foot rule, 3-foot rule that New York State has yet to adopt. So we have 4 sections right now of second grade. We have 60 kids in second grade. We had to add that 4th section back in the fall because we had several of our students who were on remote come back. We cannot squeeze all those kids in the classroom and still be in compliance with the barriers and the distancing. So I'm recommending that we bring back the literacy instructor. Lissa and Sharon and I sat down today and did a thorough analysis of the implications on that. So that's the piece I want to hit off the top, because I know Jared had talked about that. Special ed we've talked about. I am recommending that we bring back the counselor. Our students have mental health needs. I believe we received a letter from the counseling department speaking to those. The art and health. If we return these, this would to some degree mitigate, Aaron, not all of it, but to some degree would mitigate Aaron Slatt's concerns about not having any electives. There's still concern there with the technology being out, but if we bring back art and health, that will give us some more courses for kids to take at the high school level. We heard some comments regarding the proposal last meeting about JV and modified athletics. Joe had a conversation with Mr. Zieloff a week or so ago, and the approach that we want to take here, as the population dictates, we're going to have to make adjustments. So, for example, this fall we did not have JV soccer girls; we had modified soccer. So we want to have this in our back pocket. If the population does not warrant it, we'd like to do what we did in the fall with the girls soccer, for example. But that saying and recommended that we bring that back. We did hear some objection here at the last meeting. So all these things, all these pieces, 256, you're going to see in about 4 or 5 slides are in the budget. And I'm going to talk about why in a minute. Yeah.
Have we looked at the possibility of merging JV athletics with Medina for the sports that we are, the varsity sports that we're already merged with?
Yes, we have. It's been a while. I'll be honest with you, Ted, it's been a while. We have had those conversations, but we can resurrect those, yes. We have not lately, but that's a good point.
Had a meeting regarding the football when they closed that. I remember I think it was you and I that met. It may be a possibility. They did express that they would like to meet more often, and maybe we're due for a meeting. It's possible.
There was,
What do you say?
I would say you're right. And there was considerable talk, I don't know, 2 or 3 years ago about having more of the JV merged with Medina. But I will pursue those conversations. Thank you for that.
Yeah, I think at that time, the numbers were such at the JV level that both individual districts could sustain their teams.
Yeah.
I believe that is starting to change.
Yeah.
And I can also see an argument made that a varsity merged team would benefit from a merged JV team feeding that varsity team as well.
Okay, thank you. We will have information for you on that in the next couple of meetings.
So one more question on that. Is there any other ways that we look at athletics and saving money other than just looking at the JV system and the modified system? We've approached this in the past when we've had budget deficits, and we've been working through those kinds of things by, potentially knocking off, 2 games through every season, those type of
Yes.
things, rather than getting rid of a whole,
Yeah.
2 years of some.
Those have come up. Honestly, the league and the sector have gone back and forth on that when times were tight. Back in 2010, 2015, whatever, they did reduce games. There was a concerted effort to bring some more of these games back, so we have done that. We've gone back and forth on the number of chaperones at games. I think we decreased it this year because we have less people coming, but we have gone back and forth on that. But there has, I'll talk, once again, I'll talk with the athletic director in terms of scheduling. There has been, Jared, in years past, there absolutely has been talk about that, and actually it has in fact been done. So the answer to your question is yes. It's going to happen next year, I don't know, but it's worth the conversation.
Yeah, it'd be nice to look back and see what that savings actually was when we hit that stride.
I mean, I can tell you.
And have Jimmy put that together.
The savings off the top of my head would be you're not paying for, if it's a away game, you're not paying for bus driver, gasoline, officials' fees. If it's our game, we're not paying for chaperones, officials' fees, those types of things. All year.
Right, so it's a large number.
Good. Okay.
Quick question.
Yeah, Steve.
As far as the merging of sports, I know I voiced the opinion before, but I'd much rather see us do that with Barker than with Medina, for a couple of different reasons. But ultimately, as well, as far as I know, we discussed briefly sharing, like somebody like Joe's position with Barker, and maybe even Sharon Smith with Barker. What do we need to do to get the ball rolling instead of just talking about it, and to actually, whether it's through attrition?
Yeah, so I'm meeting with the Barker superintendent. I had a phone conversation after our last board meeting the next day or so. I'm meeting with him next week formally to talk about some options down the road. So he's very interested in that. He spoke on behalf of his board. That's my next move. I have a slide on that later on, but I have taken steps on that. We've pursued the Treasury Service through both cities. I'm going to meet formally with the superintendent of Barker next week to look at all these options.
Quick point on that. I'm not sure what your thinking is on why Barker, not Medina, but the history has been board to board did not see eye to eye between the two districts. So,
which two districts?
Barker and
yes, okay.
How long ago was that?
When we were discussing merging districts. So obviously there's been a change.
Was that like a decade ago?
Pardon me?
Was that like a decade ago?
I don't think it's quite that long ago. No.
But there's 4 different people from that on this board. You know what I mean? So there could be a different opinion. I think that seemed like we kind of got it on the tough end on the football side of it, and we ended up having to do our own. So I could understand looking at Barker as well. I know that they don't have soccer for their kids. For the boys, that could be something we could host something here. We already have a good relationship with football. That would be something I would be interested in hearing about too. I don't think we exclusively have to go to one school. We just learned that it's being successful the other direction as well.
And Steve, to your point, there's pieces I can add that I do not want to share in the public meeting, but we can talk about that privately or in executive session. I have pursued some of those pieces you have spoken about, but I want to save that for later. But your message was heard loud and clear. And I spoke with Jake Reamer last week. We're having lunch. We're going to start having some of those conversations. They're very interested in sharing with us because of their financial situation.
I was on the board when we discussed the merger, and at that time there was a business, I believe, that was a potential for them that was going to bring in money. Was that correct? I believe it was Verizon.
Right.
And at that time, they felt confident that the need for a merger wouldn't be prudent for them. So we went the other direction with Medina. That being said, we've had mostly successful interactions with Medina. They did pull the football, which we were frustrated with, and they in turn, we also pulled our track from them. So we both learned a lesson in that. At least I felt that I did. We stopped the merger with track, and they felt that, they were justified to do the same with football. So I would like to look at other options with Barker, but I also think it's important that we honor our agreements going forward with Medina and don't make changes until we've been, our contracts have been honored as we agreed upon initially. So I don't want to just jump the boat. Barker did not want to dance with us 10 years ago, and I respect their decision not to do so. But I think at this point, as you said, there may be a new philosophy. They're under a new financial situation as we are, and it's worth looking into.
In our defense, we only had one track person was participating there in track. Now we have a very strong track team here.
That's not true. We had maybe 10 kids that ran track, including my son. I mean, there was a significant number of kids that ran track from Medina. They had uniforms and everything. And there were probably, I count 5 or 6 right off the top of my head that ran track from Medina. That came back and ran their senior year here.
That's the beginning. Yeah.
Yeah, when we pulled back, we had probably 10 or 15 kids on the Medina team running track. We had a huge team combined with Medina.
It was kind of a learning. That was the beginning of merging, where we had a lot of pushback. We had a lot of pushback from the community. That was kind of the beginning. We were trying to figure out what to do with the goal of a long-term, just where we are right now. Our long-term goal was to be sure that we were able to offer a variety of options for a variety of different kids, and to do so and be financially responsible in doing it. So I think we've learned a lot of lessons over the years, and we're better at it, and we're more open-minded about how we go at it. So if we would have something at Barker, something at Medina, even if we have to kind of cross over a little bit, and the community is kind of, I hope, buying into the idea and seeing that there are benefits, and that if we don't do this over the long term and continue to maintain it, we aren't going to have certain sports for our kids in certain years. And I think that's just plain irresponsible.
Okay, good discussion. I've taken some notes here, and we will pursue some of those. We'll pursue those items. All right. Now for some good news. Well, this is good news. This is not about Cuomo, right? Joe.
Before we leave this slide,
Yeah.
I will go back to.
All right. Go ahead, Joe.
Before we leave this slide, what's in the current, in a minute, you'll see the numbers in the budget. What's in the budget, all of these positions are in the budget. So one of the questions tonight that I was hoping to get clarity on, if that's the right word, is each one of these positions, should I continue to leave them in the budget? And I think the answer is yes. But I want to make sure
We're going to come back. Just hang out. We're going to come back to that when I show the budget slide. So, all right. Good news. So last spring we kept hearing 20% cuts across the board. We heard that all spring, all summer. We here in this district planned for that. And the analogy so we had made adjustments to potential revenue, which was a good move that Joe made. It's no different than when you plan your personal budget. I'm going to tell the staff this on Wednesday, and maybe you count on a $2,000 tax refund, and instead you get $4,000. That's essentially what happened here. So we went through and prepared and buckled down, and we're very conservative with our revenue adjustments. We purposely underestimated our revenue expenses. Since March 8th, we have gone through, and many of these revenues have been restored as of March 23rd. In one category, Joe has it down to the dollar. We received one more dollar in software aid than we expected. So, and we have it down to that level of detail. And the example that I have here, we had budgeted $662 for special ed costs. We actually are projecting to receive $827 based on the latest output reports from the state. So this is something that when we talk about adding some of these different positions back, here's one way we can get at that, because we budgeted conservatively last year, and the revenue has since come in, or we're confident it is going to be in by the end of June. So that's a positive thing. The net was about 803 in revenue gains. We lost some here and there, but by and large, we have some of these big jumps here. So I want to recognize Joe for doing that in a conservative manner. So that is good news. More good news, kind of. We expected last June to receive $334,000 in capital project aid. We submitted our reports on time by June 30th, the final cost report. that money never came. We expected to have that money as a revenue source. It did not come. You know, we can blame the pandemic, but the money did not come. Our work was turned in on time. So this was money that we did not get, that we are expected to have this year. So this is more, it's bad news and good news. It's bad that we didn't get it, but we are going to get it this year to apply moving forward. So recommendations.
Does that money go right back into reserves?
Yes and no. Joe, how do I explain that? So we budget so much for the capital expenses, and then we get back some of it back and more in state aid. It could go into reserves. I mean, it all depends. You know, it's an accounting piece. Joe, you want to speak to that?
Yeah, we're talking about very conservative times the whole time here.
Yeah.
That's what you keep saying is conservative, 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 but we're in the red the last 3 years. So conservative doesn't mean a lot.
We're not in the red.
We have not been in the red the last 3 years.
We are not in the red.
But last year, if you look at our audit, the audit shows that we were in the red slightly by about $15,000. First time. The $334,000 should have came in last year. So that would have given us about a $300,000 surplus.
So that money never came in.
The timing. So therefore then, this year's surplus will be bigger because it didn't come in last year, it came in this year, if that makes sense. So,
Yeah, I understand that, but we pulled from reserves to fill that gap, right?
well, it was a small gap, and what will end up happening this year, yeah, we were able to take this surplus and be able to put it into reserves. Yes.
As I said, you know, it's normal to some degree to pull from reserves. The question is how much do we want to keep pulling from them so that federal aid's got assist us with that.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, to pull from today because we're going to get paid tomorrow is
Right.
one thing because you
Right.
backfill it the whole
Right.
time. But if we're just pulling and pulling in small amounts,
Right.
year 5, we've just dwindled it down.
Right.
So I'm just talking about how do we backfill it. If you keep talking about, you know, we've had to pull it from this year because we didn't get the state funding, and we're not talking about putting it right back in there when we do get the money that we're talking about.
Yeah.
Are we really?
No,
I mean, that's not really conservative if we don't put it back there, is what I'm saying.
no,
Gotcha.
we will be, and yes, the answer is yes.
Okay, so the recommendations, based on 3 of those 4 bullets there, I'm recommending that we restore quote unquote the teaching and counseling positions. These are in the budget. We're going to show you here in just a bit. I want to give you three reasons why, and then a 4th possible reason. Reason 1, bullet 1 is the federal stimulus funds. Reason number 2, we just talked through the actual versus projected revenue. And reason 3, and probably most important, the overall importance, which you heard, we heard from many of you, we heard from our community as well. So that's recommendation 3. And the 4th bullet is, I say, the good possibility that we're going to see an increase in state aid. That's not, you know, for sure. It's not a fact. It's a recommendation. If the budget's passed on time, and you know, politically speaking, we know that the governor has lost some of his standing, you know, politically wise. So I think we have some more ground there to be optimistic that some of the money would be restored. And again, we're also hoping. Hope is not a plan, but there is a proposal to, you know, restore the $622,000 back to us that we lost from the federal money. That's different from the $1.3 million. So we have the $1.3 million, then the 622, plus anything we will get above and beyond what we got in January.
Right. 334,000. And the total is an increase in state.
Across. Yeah. All right, here's another point we need to have conversation on, the SRO, School Resource Officer. Currently, it's $95,000 a year. We're in a 2-year contract. We're not locked into it. We do have an out clause, as I explained there. I'm still in negotiating with the county, with the sheriff. I do need some further direction from you on this. I have heard from some staff members and some community members on the importance of this. What we're going to show you in about 2 or 3 slides from now, this is not currently in the budget. Okay, doesn't mean that it can't get in there with a stroke of a pen, but we need to have some feedback and honest conversation on this regarding the cost. When we last met on March 8th, you know, since then there have been 2 mass shootings across the nation. I don't know if that's a sign or not, but you know, we have that going on. We have the cost. I'm not optimistic we can get a better deal. I am working on it. I called the sheriff again last week where he and I have been playing phone tag. We have time. But I think for budgeting purposes, if the direction is to keep the SRO, I think we should count on this. If anything comes down, that's more money to the good. But I want to open it up to conversation on this. This is an important topic.
Wouldn't it be a better idea to negotiate first before you tell them, yes, we'll take him? Because if we say here, we're all for it, and you go in and try to negotiate, you kind of strong armed, aren't you?
Yeah.
Why
Yes.
wouldn't we look at?
Hello? Yeah. Why won't we look at this after you negotiate a little longer with them and see what,
Okay,
and see
yeah.
what you can come up with,
We have time.
if we have time?
I had a question about that. I'm not gonna pull any punches. I'm a firm supporter of this program. And when I say that, I mean the program. I love Jason. He does a great job. He's a great police officer. He's a great coach. He's a great dad, great friend. That being said, if we're gonna continue on along these lines, other school districts in this county use their village police. Now, I do see that Officer Larkin helps Deputy Varnum in the afternoons. Is there any possibility, if this is a number that has no flexibility to it, can we reach out to the village of Lindenville and see if they'd be interested in hiring a part-time person to possibly do 7:30 to 2:30, and then adding a person to their roles, because right now they have one officer on. So if we got another officer in the village of Lindenville, it's going to be a lot less because it would be a new position. We're not going to have to worry about the car. There's already the car here. If it's something where they're on at opposite times, maybe there's an opportunity where we could speak with Mayor John Belson and see if there's a possibility of expanding the village police department and having some of our funds, which could come at a lot cheaper cost than this, to at least keep a local officer in the village, in the school. I love everything he does here, but the most important thing he does here is prevent something terrible just by even being here. Like, oh man, there's a cop there.
Okay. Yes. Any other thoughts on the SRO position? Kristen?
I know I had sent you an
Yes.
email. I am not supportive of eliminating this position in any way, shape, or form. I like Vern's idea of exploring some alternatives, but I am not, you will never get a vote out of me to eliminate this. It's just, we're not in that kind of day and age anymore. We kind of have to have a position like this. And he does so much more than just provide security here. I don't know if any of you, I know you drop your sons off and your daughter off in the morning. It's a nightmare out there. So he does a phenomenal job picking up the slack in a whole host of different areas. And if we can save costs by piggybacking on the village of Lindenville, fantastic. If we can't, then I fully support whatever we work out with the county as far as keeping our SRO.
Jared?
Why don't you think these negotiations will go anywhere?
Ask me again.
Why don't you think the negotiations will go anywhere in their current
Because
standing?
there are restrictions that the county has. So I talked to Jason about this on Friday. Because he is here full time, they then need to make up for an officer somewhere else on another shift on the road. So we, the district, are actually pulling an officer off the street, which then has to be then backfilled. So previous Sheriff Bauer offered me, like I call it, officer of the day type thing. I'm still looking at that. The reason why is because of, and I'm not saying it's wrong. The reason why is because of their contract and their obligation to make sure they have enough staffing. When I left it with Chris Bork, he was going to reach out to Jack Welch, the county officer, the county administrative officer, to see what flexibility we have. I've been down this road before. We do get overtime, built into that, so we're not paying extra for overtime. So there is some quote unquote savings in there. But the county, the sheriff, is somewhat, handicapped by having we have Jason here 180 days a year. Somebody else has to then do his job. I like the idea, and we have talked in the past about having the village help us. So that's something we can re-explore. I'm not optimistic. I think the $95,000 is something that we should count on if it comes down. Harold has a valid point though too as well. So let me see. I need to keep working on this. I called him Friday. I'm working on it.
We do have him 188 or 180 days of the year, or whatever it is, but there's 365 days in the year that were also
Right.
part of his salary. And I had hoped he would be doing some things like in the summer teaching driver's ed, or is he available to our community
Yes.
in the summer?
Yes, so he.
So
Yeah.
those are ways I think that we can justify if he's teaching some classes in the summer that would normally cost our students money to
Yeah.
receive driver training or the 5-hour course, not just one or the other, but both. We used to have driver's ed here all summer. So they're getting a benefit by us paying his salary as well. So, and I agree with what Vern's saying. I don't think it's a bad option to see how other towns are managing it. And that being said, I think he does do a great job, and he's a good face of law enforcement for our kids to grow up around. So we can't put a price on that, but I think that we could manage his time better and justify his salary if we really took a good look at it and made sure that we were getting the most bang for our buck.
Since we, well, not since, but within the last year, he has been certified to offer the permit testing here. He just got certified, or he's getting certified to be a child safety seat inspector to make sure that the seats are installed correctly. That's another service we could offer. So that I just, had learned this morning. So we are pursuing those things. But we do need to make a decision for April 12th, because we are bound by time to include this cost in there. So hang on to that thought. I'm not ending the conversation here, Ted.
Well, I agree with Harold that I think we should leave it out of the budget. I don't disagree with having an SRO, but I do disagree in principle of paying an annual salary for a county deputy employee out of school taxpayers' money for only 9 months of service. And I've always disagreed with that, acquiesced based on the safety of the children in the district. But I think we should negotiate from at least an area of strength with the county, with the village regarding that, and with the state state legislators, because there has been talk about the state funding an SRO for districts as well.
Okay. Okay, thank you. I will get the task on those items this week. Keep working on it. So this is not in the budget. Come April 12th, we have to make a decision either way, and hopefully by then I'll have more information to offer you. Again, I'm just not getting it. I'm not getting the information I need. I say that respectfully, but I'm still working on it. Back to Steve's point regarding shared services. We're actively pursuing this. I'm going to meet formally with the superintendent Barker next week. He is in the process of updating his board as well, both long-term and short-term. Ted and I are going to have a call. We're not going to, commit to anything. You heard Shane Price and Chris Vaughn speak to this down the road, planning for the future. Ted and I have a call. We're not going to commit to anything, but Ted and I have a call Thursday with Tom Ramming. Tom did your retreat back in the fall. They offer services for long-range, comprehensive staffing students, but we're just going to talk to them and see what they have to offer. And then continuing to use BOCES as much as possible for services, including the Central Business Office, Treasury, those pieces that Ted and Joe and we're dialoguing about before. So this is still very much on our radar, as well as looking at more opportunities with Medina as they arise.
Jason, can I interrupt you one second?
Yeah.
I just, with that call regarding the efficiency study,
Yes.
I'd love to hear some board input
Yes.
from that, so I can go in there with a better perspective of what our thinking is. I currently, given our previous budget situation, I was currently pretty skeptical about hiring a consultant to come in and study our system, basically based on the outlay of money outside the district. Love to hear your thinking on what you think the value of hiring a consultant for the efficiency study would give us. Is it worth the cost?
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Kristen.
What are we looking at cost-wise
We
for
don't know
something
yet.
like that?
I don't have a cost yet. I'll have that the next month or so after we talk to him. I don't have a cost yet.
Have we ever done anything like that before?
The closest we came would have been in 2010, before I got here. We hired the services of another firm from the Syracuse area. Before you engage in a merger, you have to do a study. That would be the closest we've come. We have had consultants come in the past, but not to look at efficiency studies. They've done these throughout the area, but the last time this would have been done under these lines, Kristen, would have been back in 2010 with the Barker study.
By efficiency study, you mean student to teacher ratio and all of those things?
Administration, business,
Administration,
everything.
students.
I have
Yeah.
a sample RFP that he did in Honeywell Falls. They will cover everything from music, special ed. For example, he told a story that they were in some district, they were overstaffed in music, he found, but understaffed in special ed. So when somebody comes in with a fresh set of eyes who's not part of the system, they can look at things more objectively. They can give a hard recommendation. Not that I can. We still have, if we do this, we still have to adopt these recommendations. And in some cases, he's telling me stories that the district did not even adopt the recommendations. So it would be as thorough as you want. Ted and I will have a better idea Thursday, and then we can report back to you.
Is there not information kind of from the state? Because these have been going on and going on, meaning, here, many students, you're going to want this many science, there's this many special education students, you're going to want this many teachers for that. I know there's context that goes around all of those things, but there's got to be some sort of golden ratio that kind of puts that in perspective to see if we're even on the right track, or if we're skewed really good, or if we're skewed really bad. There's got to be some sort of mean in there, right?
Yes, and there are, and the different, for example, the last time I looked at this, I spoke to the New York State Physical Education Association. They have their own recommendation. I'm skeptical to some degree of going to the association because they are looking out for their own self-interest, and I say that respectfully. Is there a magic bullet that says you should have this? No, there's not that. There is recommendations for special ed. There are recommendations, say, for guidance counselors, but these recommendations oftentimes come from their own association, statewide, nationwide. So to some degree there is, Jared, but there's not like a source I can go to that says you should have this many for this number of students. I don't. If there is, I don't know about it.
Is it going to be based only on staff to student ratio? There's got to be other things like how efficiently we're using our space,
Yes, all that.
bus drivers,
Yep.
our
Transportation, all that pieces,
Okay.
yeah, athletics.
So if this is information, like I think what Jared may be going towards, if we can get this information somewhere, if you can find it on Pinterest and figure it out, then we shouldn't be paying somebody to do it. But if there's a legitimate, he's going to have a culture in his mind, what they think, or they're going to be coming from some statistical ideation that they believe, that should happen. I guess, what are we going to get for it?
Here's what I'll do, then Jared has a question. What I'll do by Friday is send you the sample RFP that we have from another district. It can show you what this district engaged in. I have it on my desk, but I'll show that. I think Ted's already seen it, but I'll have that to you by Friday.
Yeah, I was just say that as a school system, we live and die by benchmarks, and those benchmarks have to be out there somewhere. And if it may be calling other districts that have done this. And I don't know what you have as ins for those districts, but to be, I'm pretty good at being so cheap that I just call somebody up and say, I know you paid for the information, but can I have it?
Right.
And I know we're all in that situation. And to me, if we can get that information before signing up for, or even delving too deep, because it's a lot of time for you and Ted to sit down and talk on that level. It's really, getting that information would, and then we look at our school system and say, are we just skewed way up? Close. Right. Because if we're screwed way off, then maybe we should look into this. If we're close, maybe we don't need to spend so much money on this.
Yes or no?
I'd just like to add to that it's kind of like the Obamacare thing. Just vote for it, and then why don't we find out what it's going to cost?
Yeah.
Here we are again. I understand your need to know where we stand on it, but if we don't have a cost, it makes a big difference. Is it $1 million or is it 50 cents, right? Somewhere in between there, probably, right?
Sure, and I guess, like I said at the beginning, I'm very skeptical of this, whether it's value, whether we're to get the value out of this that's really tangible in the long run. I think we're fairly close to the bone anyway. You know, what savings can we get that would justify spending whatever this is going to cost, where we could put that somewhere else to benefit our students. But I guess if I heard the opposite, oh, that efficiency study is the best thing my business ever did, it was paid for itself 4 or 5 times over. That's one thing. I guess I'm still going to go in there skeptical to if we do recommend that this go forward, that it's going to be worth it. Unless I hear different.
I would not think that efficiency, I don't think it's worth it at all. I would just say, put, Jason and the superintendent Barker in a room and they can figure it out. That's my opinion. They know better than anybody what they can do.
Okay, good feedback. All right. We'll go into it with eyes wide open, and I'll give you the sample, and we'll come back to you in April, May with an update. Good. Thank you for that. So tax levy, real quick. The levy limit, I left off all the formula there, but the bottom line, the levy limit is 2.81%. Looking for some recommendations to go out at 2. The budget you're going to see here, tonight does include a 2% levy increase, which is about $88,000 increase in the levy. So looking for some feedback on that. We'll get to that in a minute. And drum roll, please. This is the new budget with all the recommended restorations and reductions that we talked through about a half hour or so ago, as of March 29th, 2021. So this bottom line here's all the different areas. Okay. One thing I want you to notice is there is no decrease in the instructional line as it was you saw back in March 8th. There's no, because this assumes that these teaching positions would be restored for all the reasons that I outlined. The federal reasons, the philosophical reasons, and the state budget reasons, and also the revenue that we had reanalyzed. So from budget to budget, there's the increase. This does not include the SRO. Again, this does not have the SRO in there. If the SRO were to be in there at full price, we're looking at a 3.8% budget to budget increase. The SRO is not in here, but this does include the teaching position. To Jared's point regarding the literacy initiative, keeping those positions whole. Alyssa and Sharon and I are still going through looking at class size. A lot of this is going to be contingent upon COVID restrictions as to how many kids we can, put into a room and still keep it safe. So there's the bottom line. This includes the 2% levy increase. This includes these teaching positions that you heard us talk about. It includes these reductions that we talked about as well. So I would encourage you to go back and look at those slides again. These are the numbers as they stand now.
Jason, I got a quick question. Yeah. About a 2%, was that like about 86,000?
In the mid to high 80s, yeah. We can go as high now. I'm not recommending. Okay. You can go as high as 2.8.
No. I'm just asking. I mean,
2%.
That's 86,000. 89. Thank you. So that's 89,000, and the SRO is 95,000.
Well, keep in mind though, I had the same discussion with Joe about 5 hours ago. This includes the 2% levy increase here already.
Sure.
It does not include the SRO.
Does that include the 622K?
No.
Hope?
No.
Does it include the 344 reimbursement? 344?
332. What? 330.
That's
300 something.
Yeah. Okay. And then the possibility of that budgeted money off.
That does not include the 622.
So it's still, even if we had those other things, could be close to 3%.
If the 622 comes in, if the state aid goes up, we're going to be in good shape.
Much better than 3.
Yeah.
So I don't think 2% raise is pretty necessary. We just raised it 2 last year.
Well, yeah, 2
last year, 1% the year before. Could I jump in on this one?
Sure.
Okay. What I'm about to tell you is not just from Joe DePazio, 3 years as a SBO for this district. It's about 200 years of experience with all kinds of SBOs that I meet with, anywhere from Area 2, Area 1, Orleans, etc. What has been strongly recommended is that because of the tax cap for the last number of years, you just can't turn around increases in levy very quickly. In addition to that, every time you don't increase the levy, as we pointed out with the last presentation, there was 1 or 2 years before I came, we actually did a decrease in the levy. You can't recoup that at times of difficulty. It's gone. You just can't recoup it. So slow and steady is probably the way to go when it comes to the tax levy. Our tax levy is roughly about 1/3 of our budget. It's a little bit less than that now, roughly 1/3. So if we don't increase it this year, with like I said, there's at least 200 years of experience, all these SBOs, then we'll never get a chance to recoup that in times in the future when they decide to cut back our revenue. It's gone. It's like a salary when you have $10 and the next year is $10.20, but you don't raise it, so the next year's $10, and then you try to all of a sudden hit $1 raise. It's not allowed in this state. It probably won't be allowed in this state. So one thought, and I'm sorry, I'm gonna communicate this the way I see it, and if you choose to accept it or not, but strongly recommend maybe not going to the maximum, but continuing with a 2% increase this year. It's about $89,000. It'll be there next year and every year in the future. If we don't take the 2%, we won't get it next year and every year in the future. We'll lose it for the rest of the time in perpetuity because it won't be there anymore.
I understand exactly what you're saying. I'm also looking from the point of view that every parent you see at Little League is going to say, why'd you guys raise it 2%? Every parent that you see when you're sitting and having a pint at Curly's, and my thing is I have to be able to justify and say to them, well, we might need it in the future. We just had $1.29 billion come from right to Governor Cuomo's office for helping with the school aid. So we're saying, hey, we got to raise taxes after we got all this money. Just seems a little disingenuous.
So let me
just stop you, Joe. I think some of the board members want to say something. Harold, you look like you wanted to say something. Or are they wrong?
Well, I think you need to build your base. That's what this is about, keeping your base. And Joe, what would be on $100,000
house, what would the increase be? $17. Yep, a year. I got it. Biden just handed everybody $2,800 down, minimum. So that would pay this 2% for a long time. But that base you build, you can't, like you said, you can't get it back quick. And what happened, what just happened, this is a perfect example. If we would have got this money, the $25 billion they gave to New York State for education, we were dead in the water.
Sure.
And everybody else was more dead in the water. But you build your base, you build your reserves, which Jared has talked about, putting money back into the reserve for those rainy days. We're in pretty good shape.
I get it.
But
I also get that
$70 is,
we also
you get that $2,800 if you got 3 or 4 kids.
right.
It's a lot of money.
It is a lot of money. You're 100% right. But
I wanted to
this
jump in.
budget doesn't include the 622 that might come in, the 344 that might come in. How much of the pot from the 12% that we're going to get? None of that's coming in, and that can be an extra $1 million.
So if all that comes in,
Right.
we'd have to come back and wrestle with that again. Right now, the way we have it written now is to include. Right now, we're assuming none that's going to come in, right? We have to assume that, but we're going with the 2% levy recommendation, as Harold and Joe spoke to. If this extra money comes in, which we should know next week, I hope we'll have some decisions to make not only with the tax levy but also with the SRO.
Sure.
And
But we're not $1 million SRO.
But we
We
also.
can also put some of that money back into our reserve.
Yes, and we also have to balance out the point. Once that money, as Joe said, once that money is, I need to say it again, we want to make sure that we're being respectful to our taxpayers, of course, I totally get that, but also doing what we can to keep our, program intact and enhanced as well, and improvements. I'm just gonna.
And here's another perspective and I agree with Joe, regarding refilling the base. We've hit our reserves pretty hard the last couple of years, and here's an opportunity to pay some of that back. The other perspective is that this is a windfall. but it's only a windfall to 2023. We are restoring positions back. Are we going to then eliminate them in 2023 because we're not filling our coffers back? So we have to plan for the long term, not just the short term.
I guess I understand both sides of the argument. I think the optics of raising the taxes after the school is $1 million look terrible.
After what?
After we get $1 million of aid in, it doesn't look good. I mean, it stinks. I haven't, but at the same time, I think the only way I would support the tax levy increase is if we were all to agree somehow to some serious future plans with fixing the admin cost and merging what we could to save money long term. Just because, I mean, I'm not in support of every year we're gonna need to raise it 3% to be sustainable. That's the only way I see it even working. And that, over 5 to 6 years, that's gonna get ugly. So, I mean, again, I would agree with raising the tax levy, but only if everybody agrees to really seriously exploring fixing it in the long term.
I disagree with the optic thing. I think the main optic that Lindenville has is we stayed open almost 280 days of a school year. That had a cost to it. And I think our parents and our families appreciate the fact that we did that. Other school districts in the area are still trying to figure out how to deal with a hybrid situation and how to come back. I'm very proud that we kept in-school instruction optional, open year-round with the minus to 4 days or whatever we had before the Christmas break. To me, that's an optic that says that's worth something to me as a taxpayer, and is easy to say on the side of the Little League field, why are you raising taxes? Just my opinion.
Just think what you say $17, right? Just think what us having school year round saved a lot of parents in babysitting fees. I mean, that's what's killing a lot of these other communities is the parents have got to find somebody to watch their children if they're both working, and there's a lot of two parents working. So, $17 is a small thing to ask for what this board combined did. We did something nobody else did. I watch on TV every day where they're talking about how they're going to get back by April, May, get maybe 1 or 2 days in. Well, we're the example. Somebody should come here and take a picture of what we did, because it was above and beyond what anybody else did. I mean, there's probably some other schools out there that did it, like Kendall maybe I think did, and some, and I think our numbers of COVID was minimal. Actually less than the hybrids were doing. I mean, if you read the paper every day, that the hybrid schools are having more problems because there are more of them are home. All the kids are playing together. They're home because they're only on the computers for 2 or 3 hours. And I think we did a great job. And we need to build our base. And I don't think we're not reaching into pockets that are empty right now.
I want to go back to Steve's point. I think, what he's looking for is, more nods of the head, as I like to say, in terms of, pursuing some of these studies. Whether we engage in a formal study or not is not the point. But yes, my conversations with the Barker superintendent, our conversation with Erie 2 and Erie 1 BOCES for shared services in the back room or in the back office would be a possibility. Shared administrative staff, we've had conversations about that. So there's all those pieces. If, using Steve's point, if we're going to commit, if you're going to commit to a 2% levy increase, you're giving us direction as a district to pursue some of these, the Barker, the JV, all these pieces, the SRO, and I'm not recommending it, but it could include a formal study. There's a whole menu of options that we have to choose from. So I think I would just want to kind of finesse Steve's point there, which I think is a valid one.
So looking back at what you're putting through tonight, we're looking at $273,000 in reduction, plus the potential of an SRO reduction, whether it's $100,000, $50,000, or $0, that could be added in there. So when we started this whole process, it was $550,000,
Yes.
around, give or take. And now we're happy with $273,000
in reductions
because of a windfall that really wasn't there per se. We thought it might be coming. We're still not counting on it.
Right.
Until it's here. How does that necessarily say that we've got a balanced budget with stuff that we don't know is coming in?
Well, because
Other than for the first year, it's gonna help us out immensely right
So-
now. In the immediacy, boom, we're flush.
what we know.
But in 2 years,
Yeah, what we know, one, you already mentioned the federal money. Two, we went through and explained to you how we, found additional revenue. That's not the best way to put it, but we had under budgeted and tracked additional funds. Those are facts, right? So those are
and
facts.
those help us this year.
Yeah, and down
And
the road,
that's- and
yeah,
2020.
and down the road too, because the money, and down the road too, Jerry, that's money, when we have a surplus this year, and we're expecting to have a decent surplus this year, that's also gonna help us down the road. That will also then help us fund those reserves that you saw, the employee reserve, those different reserves, that will help us down the road. The 800 grand or whatever, that will help us down the road. The stimulus money will help us down the road. If somebody in the House get their budget passed in one form or another, that'll help us down the road. So I'm not recommending any more cuts. I'm not recommending any more additions, obviously. We still need to deal with the SRO. So the answer to your question, the excess funds or the additional funds that we gain will be used to then, to some degree, to your point about an hour ago, to then replenish those reserves. So we do have money in the bank for a rainy day. And again, we're not under fiscal stress. We're just trying to be thoughtful and planning. It doesn't look like I answered your question.
I'm just not content with it.
Okay, all right. Want to add anything to that, Joe?
I need a couple of things.
I would like to add 2 things or 3. The first is that without the SRO added, our year-over-year increase is 3.1%. So if we do not increase the tax levy, then we need to find 3.1% more from state aid. And typically 2% or so is still under the 3.1% increase, because 1/3 or so of our revenue comes from tax levy. The second is that every year assessments go up. So when we talk about $89,000, we're not talking about a tax rate. Last year, the tax rate went down 2 pennies. I mean, it wasn't much, but it went down year-over-year tax rate for the school payment, because the assessments went up. We're not talking about increasing assessments here. That's not our job, but we are talking about increasing the tax levy. And if the assessments go up faster than our choice of increasing tax levy, the actual tax rate goes down. If you remember the chart, it's not here, but at the last budget presentation, we significantly reduced our tax rate, and it's continually been within the $15 middle range. So that's a good thing too. And then last is, as I was saying earlier, in what you were saying, we are getting a one-time influx of money from the federal government. It's a couple, 3 years, that gets used up.
Okay, I'm gonna go back and share this again. Where's it, Jason? Okay, so, we'll leave this as it stands now. I'm not, we'll have more time to see what the state runs are between now and April 12th, where we should have something intact. We have the 2% baked in. I'm gonna go back and look at the pieces you've asked me to, such as the Barker piece, the SRO piece, the athletic piece, and it's possible there could be some changes between now and then as well. The last piece, this is just a quick summary of our reserve status. So as I like to talk about, there's different levers you can pull. So here, to Jared's point, here's this, federal aid that we are going to allocate right now that we know is for sure. If we say, for example, add the SRO at full cost, right? this number here is gonna go up. Or we get additional state aid and we pull it from there. If we go with a 0% levy or 1% levy, this number is gonna go up. Okay, if we get the, as I mentioned before, the 2% or the state aid runs, if those come in better, and the 622 that Assembly and Senate are recommending be given to us, that could have some positive implications too. So that we still have 2 or 3 unknowns out there. This is why we wanted to have the workshop to get more guidance from from all of you. But again, it's a matter of which number you want to pull here. The good news is, if nothing changes, we are trying to reduce our reliance on reserves from last year. It's not what it was here, but again, if the state money comes in, this can go down. I don't even want to give you a guess as to how much more state aid we could get. You see the recommendation, 12% state aid or statewide. It doesn't mean we're going to get 12%. I don't even want to give you a recommendation or even a hunch on that. So the next steps, and then we'll have more conversation. We want to receive the finalized New York State aid run on or about April 1st. In the recent history, we have had on-time budgets. So I'll have to give some credit there. That's helpful to us. Between Joe and I, we're going to continue to flood you with information between now and the next board meeting. And the board meeting on April 12th, we'll go back and review and approve the budget. And again, we expect to have better numbers for you by then. So on April 12th, we'll go through and we'll give another budget presentation. I'll have better answers for you, I hope, on the SRO. It's not for lack of trying, that's for sure. I will pursue the calls with Mayor Belson and update you more on the Barker information. We are going to pursue the shared treasury service now with Erie 2. That box is checked. We will continue to explore some of those back office services as well. I'm meeting with the faculty on Wednesday as a whole to kind of give them an overview as to where things land. I met with these teachers Friday morning to let them know the status of their position. They were more than relieved. But again, this is all contingent upon the next 2 or 3 meetings and directions from you. So that's my shtick and comments. I'll be happy to take obviously more questions, comments, but I think this has been helpful for us. So Jared, I want to get some resolution. We can talk some more. I know they want to answer you are not content with, so we can talk more later about that. I want to find out. Thank you. Yeah. I'm just going to go around the table if that's okay with you to see any final thoughts. Vern?
I'm good.
Good. Jared?
I just quickly, while you guys are sending out numbers and you're going to inundate us with information, you sent along the cost of curriculum in your last email, but it didn't include next year's budgeted.
Okay, so thanks I should have mentioned that before. So we are not changing ELA, and I hope teachers are hearing me on this. We are not changing ELA math curriculum next year. We hit some of the, I should have had that in the slides. We hit some significant upfront costs 2 years ago, right? Those upfront costs have now been gone. We have continual renewal services. Some of the feedback that the teachers have given us in the survey included things less reliant on consumables. We have some teachers who are very adept using digital resources, so we're going to be looking at those. So we're not expecting, outside of the normal cost of doing business, any significant increase in any curriculum. We're not changing ELA and math curriculum. We're going to keep on keeping on. Those upfront costs, we have to buy consumables, workbooks, but we're going to be looking at those.
And over the last 3 years, you stated also that it went from 13,000 just in upkeep for the digital and the consumables to 19,000 to 20,000, and now we're going to be hitting 21-22. And I'm just wondering where that hit. Like if you sat down with the teachers yet and really flushed out their needs to see if we get that from going up any more than it is to going down.
Yes.
To go back down to 13 or what are we talking about? Because it's a pretty big savings if we can get it back down to that.
Yeah.
But again, I think that's sitting down with teachers to do that.
Yep.
I think one of the other notes that I had on here was grants. I mean, we like free money. Obviously we do. We got an influx of it. That's what we're relying on. And I know that Alyssa's put in a lot of time there, and I'd love to see some way of dedicating some time, if there is that to be done, into looking for those grants in the upcoming years for things that we might pay for already that we can get covered elsewhere, or programs that we're going to lose through attrition that we're not backfilling, but possibly there's grants for the arts and things like that. Because that's my wheelhouse. Like getting rid of any of those things crushes my heart. And looking into that and finding somebody that's good at those things, and I think she is. And I don't know if she loves doing it or not. That's really a question that you guys would have to have. Hopefully I'm not speaking for her. But yeah, everything else that I've got on here, we can hit, and you have hit some of it.
Thank you. Mr. Van.
I'll just reiterate what I said before. I just want to make sure that we are taking the right steps for the long-term sustainability of this program, of Leaville School. That we're looking past 2021, 2022, 2023, but yeah, it's 2028 looks like, just the costs aren't going to go down every year. The budget's going to go up. That's just the reality. So I just hate to see us have to can't just be the tax levy every year. We just can't do it that way.
Okay, thank you. I'll save Ted for last, but Harold?
I just think,
Turn the mic on.
You listen, is it gonna hurt? Yeah, it's working, right?
Yeah, you're good.
All right. Like it's good. He had to get a new battery. I didn't talk as much, so I didn't need a new battery. But I think what's nice about you two gentlemen and the staff you have is that you are changing on a run. And this year it's been a lot of changing on a run, and I appreciate that you guys. Sometimes you're at our beck and call, it seems, but you always seem to fill that void and give us good numbers as you get the numbers. I mean, there's been other boards that have been on before you guys that a lot of times you didn't know, and they wouldn't tell you, and it was kind of like the old vote for it, and then we'll see what happens. And I think you guys are staying ahead of the avalanche, as they say.
I don't have anything new basically other than what's been said, and I agree with Steve. It's not a new concept for this board to continually look at making sure that we're running efficiently, effectively, and within our budget to be good stewards of the taxpayers' money that we are responsible for. So I would agree with Steve in that respect, and thank you guys for your work that you put together tonight. And I have one other thing I'm going to mention after. I guess I could just run out there. Maybe when you're doing your negotiation with Mr. Bork, you might want to grab one of these guys, Steve, or somebody that's Harold, or kind of negotiator types. Just a suggestion, because I think that it's good to have a different perspective when you're dealing with a situation like that.
I agree with Sue as far as the SRO goes. I think if the county realizes that we might be pulling that position, it puts them in constraint because they're going to have to turn around and start paying Deputy Barnum instead of our district. So I think that's a good negotiating tool. I think bringing the sheriff on top, or bringing the Jack Walsh involved in that discussion too might be some benefit. He might be able to see the cost savings to the county to lower what our obligation to them might actually end up being. Even if it's $5,000 or $6,000, it's a savings for our district, but it ultimately ends up saving the county money. I do agree with Steve that we have to come up with a long-term game plan, because eventually all this extra money that we may get is not going to be there next year or the year after that. So we have to come up with a long-term game plan, because robbing Peter to pay Paul and then turning around in 2 years and laying off teachers because we weren't responsible, it just is, it's a disservice to our district, and it's not what we're here for.
I guess to sum up, I agree a lot with what everybody's saying, especially regarding long-term planning. Thanks to Joe and Jason and their staffs for the budget, but I think the real winners here tonight, at least at the precipice where we were close to, is the students of the district. And restoring teaching positions that are physically in front of our students, that if you lose them, the chances of getting them back in the long run are difficult. It's unfortunate that we had to go to the edge of the cliff before we got fiscal relief, and I really hope the fiscal formulas that the state uses for education funding ends up being more equitable throughout the state. And I guess I'm not super optimistic about that, but and that's why we need to continue the long range planning that we do. So that's it.
Go. I just want to hear you say no once. Tell these guys no once in a while. All right? That's what I want to hear out of Joe's mouth. Once in a while over the next 2 to 3 years, I want to hear Joe say no.
He does, believe me, he does.
I do, but I do recognize the fact that we have students and they need to be educated, and we want to move up the chart in terms of our performance too. The other factor is, and I'll throw it out, there's a mathematical calculation. So I'm going to just speak from a mathematical calculation, that we're 75 or 80% labor and benefits. Therefore then, there's raises every year in healthcare and salaries. So if we're not right-sized, we need to be right-sized, but even if we're right-sized, it's a good 3% to 3.5% each year. Without the ability of having older teachers retire and bringing in younger teachers that cost less, we have not had that for 2 years. 1 in 2 years is almost 0, right? 0.5. So the mathematical calculation ends up being that you have to anticipate, even if you're right-sized, a good 3.5% increase year over year. Now, if we don't get that from New York State on a regular basis, and if we don't get that from the tax levy on a regular basis, then we're going to continue to use whatever we can to fund our organization, which is reserves, savings. So one of the reasons why I mentioned about the tax levy, it's 1/3 of our revenue, approximately, at the 2% or so every year, that getting us closer to keep up with the 3.5% increases each year. If New York State chooses not to give us increases, then that puts us in a situation that either we fund it with savings or we have to reduce costs. Reduce costs, we cut back significantly on travel. I mean, zero travel, and we've done all kinds of things in terms of that other 20%. But you can see what's coming. Gasoline's going up, so our transportation costs are going up. Under this administration, who knows what else is going up? Things are going up right and left. That's the other 20%. And then labor is going up because there's raises every year. Healthcare is going up. So I just wish you would think that long term, it's not the easiest thing to control a 3.5% increase each and every year. Unless if we get the availability of getting older teachers to retire and younger teachers in their place, or we end up getting New York State revenue that will compensate us for the increases in cost each year. Now, this particular year, we got an influx, a one-time influx from the federal government, and we are buying into that. We're using that. But we can't count on that every year. They call it the cliff. So I need to say this. No, I say no. But I take a look at our situation too. I mean, money is a tool, right? It's a tool. It's a tool to get our students the best possible education. And if we're low on that list, we have to improve. So that's part of it. And in addition to that, we have reserves. We're not broke. We're not broke. I need to say that. But we have to be prudent and fiscally responsible when we spend our money. So I'd like to end on that, if I may, from what I have.
And I want to thank all of you for the feedback. Joe and I are going to get back to this again. I'm going to pursue the calls, keep pursuing the calls with the county. I may have somebody sit in with me on those. and I expect to get a resolution on that soon. That's really my number one priority. Of information for you this Friday, by Friday, on the RFP for the possible study, so you have an idea what's involved with that. I'm meeting with the Barker superintendent next week. We'll start planting those seeds and being more aggressive with that. And we will pursue the shared treasurer position as a start, or not the shared treasurer position, the treasurer position through BOCES, which is the cost savings, which will get us our toes in the water and see how it goes. So with that, I think we're good. Good, okay, thank you.
I emailed you those ideas about the migrant stuff and the village thing, just as